Perfect. Well, we would like to welcome everyone to our inaugural panel discussion at UID. Our topic today is the best currency in times of disruption. Our panelists, as you can see from the screen, are Mary Kelly, Mike Marks, and Paul Reilly. And our moderator is Dirk Beverage.
Hello.
And I just want to please ask those of you that are in attendance, if you do have any questions, to please use the Zoom Q&A box. That would be absolutely perfect. We'll have someone monitor the chat in Huva. Again, we'd love to, for this panel, just to expedite things, keep everything in Zoom if you don't mind.
Cool.
So again, getting us started, Dirk, I want to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Joanna. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for this concluding session of UID. And I know it's been an amazing week for you all, and congratulations for investing in yourself and really giving what you've got to this amazing learning opportunity that UID has put together. I'm going to set the stage real quick and introduce our panelists. But while we do that, would you do me a favor? Find that Zoom chat, if you don't mind. And why don't you tell us where you're from and one word to describe your UID experience, okay? So where you're from and one word to describe your UID experience. We'd love to see that in the chat. So please go ahead and do that. So again, welcome to this panel discussion. The title of this panel discussion is the best currency in the times of disruption. Now, I know you and I all know that we are in this disruptive time, and then put on top of the disruption, COVID, and oh my God, we need to be talking about as leaders, right? What is our role? What do we do? What's our best currency in this age, this time of disruption? So in order to have this conversation, I'm going to let our three panelists introduce themselves. We have Dr. Mary Kelly, we've got Paul Reilly, we've got Mike Marks, and Mary, can I ask you to kick us off and just give a brief introduction of yourself, please?
Hey, thanks, Dirk, and other panelists and everybody here from UID. So excited to be with you. Even more excited about next year seeing you all face to face. And I just wanted to say my name is Mary Kelly. I spent 25 years on active duty in the Navy. I retired as a commander. I did intelligence and logistics in Asia for about 17 of those years. I feel very fortunate to have been taught by some of the best leaders on the planet. And I'm currently coming to you from the snowy metropolis of Monument, Colorado, population 5,600. That's it, 5,600. That's all we got. Looking forward to it.
Wow. Mary, you make a statement wherever you go, but in a populace of 5,600, man, everybody knows Dr. Mary Kelly. I love it. Hey, thanks so much, Mary. Really looking forward to this.
Let's do it.
Paul, how about yourself, bud?
Yeah. Hey, man, it's great to be here. But as I mentioned to my fellow panelists, when we first talked about this back 6 months ago, my first thought was, why on earth would I want to be on a panel that would have me as a member? Right? I was thinking of the late, great Groucho Marx, right? Why would I join a club that would have me as a member? But thrilled to be part of this with my esteemed colleagues. You know, a little background on me. I focus on helping salespeople sell more profitably. My background is selling and distribution. Man, I've experienced some disruption both in my business and when I was selling and distribution as well. So I'm thrilled to be here with all of you, just to share some thoughts, to learn from each other, and to finish out this program strong. So thanks for having me, everyone.
Thanks, buddy. I'm surprised, Paul, that, you know, just looking at your youth, you even know who Groucho Marx is, but we'll take that. And I think what that does do is gives us a real good segue to distribution's real Groucho Marx, Mr. Mike Marks. Mike, welcome.
I love you, man.
I love you, buddy.
I'm the old guy in the panel, and I didn't know Groucho Marx, but I came up through sales. I was one of the guys my senior year in college. I decided college was stupid, and I decided to become a professional gambler. And became a blackjack dealer in Lake Tahoe at King's Castle, and that lasted 6 weeks, and decided college wasn't that bad. But I basically came up through sales and sales management and ended up running electronics distribution business and semiconductors. and started consulting back in '87. So now we've got a company. We've been working with distributors, as Dirk knows, and Paul and Mary knows, since Dirk. And I have young, talented people in the company, and I was on a call with a client earlier today, and one of the other partners said, "Mike, your opinion's the least important," which got a laugh out of everybody, but it was actually true.
Yeah.
I race sports cars and have a really wonderful time. So that's it. That's me. I'm happy to be here, and I probably have good stories, but I'm probably the dumbest guy in the panel.
I would not agree with that, but Mike, great to have you as well. Hey, and everybody, I see you putting things in the chat. I appreciate that. Something's going on with the Zoom. It looks like 98% of them are, at least the way I can see it, says that this is an encrypted message. So I apologize. I can't give a shout out to the majority of you, but I saw Calgary, I saw Virginia, I saw that this has been an inspiring week and the like, but the majority of them are encrypted. So for some reason, I can't read that, but thank you for putting that in. So I am Dirk Beverage. I'll introduce myself real quick. I am Dirk Beverage. I'm the founder of Unleash WD. We're a design, innovation, and strategy firm that's committed to helping legacy distributors become nimble and market leaders. And I have to tell you, this topic of the best currency in times of disruption is near and dear to my heart. Some of you are familiar. About 6 years ago for the NAW, I did the first research on the state of innovation throughout distribution, and we published this book that's titled How Successful Distributors Lead Change in the Age of Disruption. And so we all of us on the panel have been talking for years about this state that we are in, this age of disruption. And now with COVID, it's really important to just stop, pause, and think and center ourselves on what we mean by disruption and what we as leaders can, should, and must do to lead our organization into the future profitably and to provide relevant sustainability and profitability going forward. So with that, let's dive into the topic and let's begin with that word, disruption. What does disruption mean to each of you on the panel? And could you share what you believe is a key disruption that is going to impact distributors who are attending UID more than others? So Mary, you kicked it off great last time. Can I go to you again?
I think disruption just means things are changing at an accelerated rate. And I find this exciting. If you ask a group of people, for example, say, describe a bunch of people who don't like change, you're going to get old, stodgy, set in their ways, cranky, slow. Wait a second. Then describe people who like change. You're going to get excited, forward-thinking, visionaries, creative, innovative. That's where I think disruption is. I think disruption is a forced acceleration of change. And I think it's up to us to mold it in a way that best works for not only us, our companies, our businesses, but also our communities. I think with great disruption comes great responsibility. And this is why I love that we get to be on this panel with these big brains, because we're going to hopefully figure out some ways to turn what for many people is disruption. We think of it, it makes it sound negative, but I find it to be exciting. How do we turn this into not just a comparative advantage, but a competitive advantage? And when I say competitive, not with the other people on this call, but as an industry, how do we become more competitive? How do we become better, faster, stronger? How do we use this time for the best possible outcomes for the people we serve?
Boy, Mary, there's a lot there that we can and we will unpack. All right. So, and I love the proactivity of it, right? I love the fact that we should be looking at disruption as an opportunity rather than as a threat. And we'll come back. There's a lot to talk there. Mike, can I go to you, bud?
Sure. To me, disruption is you take a company that's in flow. We know what to do. We're making money. We're growing. They haven't changed anything, but all of a sudden what they're doing is not working as well. And the external environment's changing faster than they are. They're falling behind. And so to build on what Mary said, Peter Drucker, the management guru guy, he made a big thing his whole life about there is opportunity and chaos. And that was the first time I heard that line, are you playing the game to win or playing it not to lose? And so there's disruption all around people all the time, but the idea is that what I was doing used to work, it doesn't work. And the curmudgeons, they're the ones that just get unhappy because they don't like anybody to move their cheese. And the other folks are going, yeah, man, let's play.
Right on. And it's those curmudgeons, as you described them, that get passed by, right? By those who do get in there and want to play. I think of the Great Man in the Arena poem, right? Teddy Roosevelt,
Yep,
right?
yep.
It's about those that step into the arena and get things
Well,
done.
the curmudgeons become the market share contributors to the market share challengers.
I love it. If I could read the chat, I would say, are there any curmudgeons in the room here? And we want to see no, right? Yeah, I love it. Thanks. Paul Reilly, how do you define disruption, bud?
Simply put, the first word that came to mind was opportunity.
Wow.
Disruption is good, and something to think about. Without the disruption that we have faced over the past couple of years, some of the distributors that are on attendance might not be here 5 years from now. And the reason I say that, the pain of this disruption forces us to change. And a slow and steady demise is worse than the quick demise that we experienced during this pandemic, because the intensity of that pain happens in a matter of months versus a matter of years. Think about a slow, steady decline over a 3 to 5 year period where things, they don't get bad enough to where you really know you need to change. About last year at this time, I think all of the leaders, the salespeople on this call, on this webinar, said something does need to change. And without that event, they may have never changed. And so it's a good thing. It's painful, but it's good. So that's what I think. It's an opportunity. We just have to view it as an opportunity.
Boy, Paul, I love it. And I think there's a golden thread through each of your responses about seizing the opportunity in that. Yeah, I like that a lot. And do you want to, gosh, Paul, you said something else and I made a note, but guys, I can't read my own writing. So there you go. All right. We're going to miss that one. All right.
Are you a doctor?
They wouldn't have accepted me into school, Mike. All right.
That's like
Even if I
calling the
wanted
panel.
to be a doctor. So guys, I love the thinking. I'll just add to it, just building upon what you say. I agree with you guys. To me, disruption is all about significant change, transformation that is absolutely going to change the way business is done. And this change is often from outside forces. Here, to me, is the key point. Disruption requires new thinking. Disruption requires new mindsets. That might be the hardest. Disruption requires new skills, and disruption requires new capabilities, not just for me, not just for the 300 individuals at UID, for everybody throughout that organization. It requires new thinking, new mindsets, new skills, and new capabilities. And disruption absolutely changes the game, right? We could go all the way back to automobiles, right? Disrupted buggy whip manufacturers, obviously, right? These mobile devices changed very, very quickly how we communicate, how we sell, how we market. New customers in your accounts, right, are changing disrupting the very definition of relationship, which so many distributors have built their businesses on, right? Disrupting the very definition of relationships very, very quickly. And COVID obviously has disrupted, how people work, and it drives the need for that change that you all talked about. So let's go here for a second, you guys. I do want to get to some specific disruptions, but before we go that, I think the golden thread in each of your answers was to look at disruption, this pace of change, as an opportunity, something to seize, all right? I'd love for you to expand upon that a little bit more. Either why you see it as an opportunity, I think you touched on that, but how? Are there 1, 2, or 3 steps? I know we're going to talk about some other things deeper, but just off the top of your head, if I want to see disruption as an opportunity, coach me. How should I be thinking about being able to do that and leading my team to seize opportunity and disruption? Who'd like to go first?
Go ahead, Paul.
3 words come to mind.
Yep.
Acknowledge, act, adapt.
Cool.
All right. When you think about a disruptive time or tough time, The first thing we've got to do is we have to acknowledge that what we're facing is unprecedented, or that it's tough. We can't just stick our head in the sand and say, the way we've been doing it for 20, 30 years, that will continue to propel us forward. You acknowledge, but you don't accept it. There's got to be a difference there. Acknowledging it is like the bare minimum of recognition. We don't want to give disruptive times or tough times any more recognition than they need. We simply acknowledge it. Then we got to take action. Taking action is I think sometimes the toughest part for people, because they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, Dirk, I remember listening in on some of your LinkedIn conversations early on in the pandemic, and you mentioned something along those lines that, hey guys, nobody really knows what to do right now. And if I'm misquoting you, please step in and let me know. But so we do have to take action. We've got to move forward, and then we adapt along the way. I've heard Mike Marks say several times, stay light on your feet. And I think that's what we've got to do, is we've got to make sure that we're acting and then adapting along the way.
Thank you,
I
Paul.
bet Mary's got a lot to add to that, especially,
Yeah.
when it comes to
military, right?
training and that. I mean, think about it.
Yeah. And Paul, great. And by the way, if you ever do misquote me and it's a great quote, I'm going to take credit for it. All right, bud? All right.
Hey, same here. All right.
Right on. Mike, I know you had a thought there as well.
Well, I really like the acknowledge, action, adapt that Paul
Yep.
talked about, because the action part, what we find, or what I found, is that a lot of times, if they once start to take some action, step 2 and 3 is a lot easier, but it's so hard to take that first step. And the very first thing that popped into my mind probably wasn't terribly appropriate, but it works. And that's that. You see a lot of companies, when they realize there's disruption, put some cross-functional teams together in your company and say, you've just been hired by McKinsey to go set up a distributor in our market and put me out of business. What are you guys going to do? Come back and tell me, and I'm going to take the best idea and we're going to go do it. I mean, you have to start.
Yeah. Well, great. What a great tactical thing there too, Michael. Thanks. Appreciate it. Mary, I see you leaning in.
So I get so
Yeah.
excited because this is such a great time for leaders to step up. And there's a few things that have happened in the past 12 months that are great opportunities if we choose to see them this way. First, it changed how we viewed the people who work for and with us. For some of those people, because of the work from home thing, guess what? It leveled the playing field. All of a sudden, that person who's really charismatic at work and they talk to everybody and they're super friendly, turns out they weren't really accomplishing very much. And in the work from home environment, we're able to see that more clearly. And that person that everybody kind of ignores all the time, gosh, their sales numbers are through the roof. They're wildly good. And we kind of didn't recognize that because their personality was much quieter and they were being overshadowed by maybe some other large personalities that were in the space. So I love the fact that there is this great equalizer in the new environment. The second thing I love as an opportunity is because we can use this as our sense of urgency. We can say, because of COVID, this. Now, I said this in my program, this is not an excuse to have worse customer service. And a lot of people do that. And I said this, you've seen it on people's websites. Because of COVID, we're experiencing higher than other call volume. Well, then get better at it. It's been a year. Don't use COVID as an excuse to be worse. You know what I'm talking about. Use COVID as the sense of urgency to propel us to be better. You know what? During recessions, we economists love recessions because it makes us prioritize what's really important. And that would be number 3. We use the situation to create the sense of urgency, which drives the change that, guess what? We've been waiting to do for years. And now is time. You've been thinking about innovating. You've been thinking about shaking things up. And now is time, because if you don't change, if you continue to do things the way you were, you're not going to be in business. So those 3 things to me is what makes it a very exciting time.
Well, I love it, Mary. And by the way, Mary, I am ready to enlist in the Navy as of right now. All right.
I'm fired up.
Yeah,
Mary,
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. So I love it, you guys, right? That sense of urgency, right? It's having that willingness to acknowledge it, right? And to move on, to act, and then, continually adapt, as you suggested as well, Paul. And Mike, you talked about, the need. I loved your idea. Get cross-functional people together in a room, take a look at the situation, develop an idea, and develop that best idea and act, right? So really great insight. I'll add to it. As I was listening and thinking to it, to me, I think one of the things we do, and I touched on this, those of you that were in our course yesterday, I think it's critical at this time that leaders have a vision, that the leaders are the ones, because everybody's looking at you. Everybody's looking at you saying, where are we going? What are we doing? What's important? What should I be focused on? What is our destination outside of this, right? And so I think it's really critical that as leaders, you have the ability to get away from that immediacy of what's happening right there, to step up top a little bit and look at the landscape and find out where COVID, for example, is going to be taking distribution, taking your business, taking your markets, taking your customers, and start painting a picture, a destination, a vision for your organization as to what you're working to accomplish to come out stronger on the other side. So I would add that to that. Anybody would like to comment on that? Good, bad, and indifferent, or anything else that you heard from the others?
So one of the points I like to make is your vision plan has to be so compelling, so exciting, a little bit scary, but also telling people where it is you want to go.
Yes.
And I talked to a VP and I said, so what's your vision for this organization? This was just a couple months ago. So he'd had a long time to think about it. And he looked at me and he was just dejected. And he said, Mary, I'm just trying to get through the day.
Right on.
And I kind of got a little mad at him. I said, look, you're the VP. I said, your job is to have the vision. Your job is to create the vision. Your job is to bring the excitement, to create compelling goals. I said, if you're sitting here and you don't have a vision, how do you expect those 200 people to have a vision? I got a little, and he said, well, I just feel dejected. I said, you're the leader. You don't have that as an option. Like in the options of A, B, C, D, that's not an option. Feel dejected. No, your job is not to, you don't have to be sunshine and roses and sparkles and unicorns all the time. But your job as the leader is to be the optimist. It's to have the vision. It's to convey the vision. And I view the term optimist not as, sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, and sprinkles, although everybody likes sprinkles. But the optimist is somebody who looks at a tough situation. This is according to the APA, the American Psychological Association. They look at a tough situation and they say, you know what? I can make that better. And that is what I need from you, Mr. Vice President. And he was like, well, so I need a vision. I said, yeah. And he goes, how do I get one of those? I said, got a 5-minute vision plan right here for you. We're going to sit down and do it right now.
Yeah. I love it, Mary. And you reminded me of a conversation I had yesterday with the owner of a gas distribution company, and they use the term CASOS, and I didn't know this. And through our Shift to Tomorrow,
Dirk, what did you say? What was the word?
It's CASOS, COSOOS. Come out stronger on the other side.
Nice.
And that was their rallying point, right? And we talked a lot about coming out stronger on the other side, but they put a label to it, right? Which I loved, CASOS. And then it was a point of a point that everybody in that organization could center on. And in finance, we could say, all right, CASOS, what does that mean to us? How are we in finance going to come out stronger? What's our vision? Warehouse, what's our vision? And roll that up to the top. Paul, Mike, any thoughts?
To Dirk, to build on that and what Mary said, I mean, I'm writing down notes feverishly because I'm getting some just truth bombs from you, from Mary, from Mike. I think the one thing, we've got to have the vision. We got to look at our behavior. I know when I work with sales leaders, one of the biggest challenges isn't so much the vision, it's translating the vision into daily to weekly action, because it comes down to the behavior. You got to remember, as a leader, your behavior is either going to motivate your team to extend beyond their boundaries, or it's going to be the excuse they need to stay within them. So you've got to inspire the team, not with your vision, obviously, but your behavior must be consistent with that vision on a daily basis.
Yeah, without question. And we need that self-reflection and that self-awareness, right, Paul, to ensure that we are in fact living what we're asking everybody else of. Mike, any thoughts, bud?
I'd like to just add something in. We don't need to cover. By the way, I'm in violent agreement with everybody. So all that part's right. But one of the things that I've seen because of the pandemic, Dirk, is that people, in terms of the acknowledgement part, they don't have good information. They're sitting here trying to make decisions about their company by what they see on television. Yeah. And the hype and they can't tell what's real, what's not real. And what was said with an agenda. And
Right.
so to me, they really need to do research and look at multiple sources to acknowledge something. It's important enough you have to do a little research, at least go look, if
Yeah.
nothing else, go Google dive. Mary, did that
Mike,
bring it? Go
Mike,
ahead.
let me ask you, let's assume, right, that, we have a lot of, let's say, mid-level managers, right, here at UID. If you had to say 1, 2, or 3 things, if they wanted to, be able to start crafting that vision for their team to drive, the necessary change that we're all talking about, right? And they could be managing the warehouse, they could be managing finance, whatever. Do 1, 2, or 3 areas of research come to your mind that you would quickly recommend to them to start thinking about?
And by the way, for everybody that's listening, he did not pay me to say this. They probably ought to go buy your innovation book.
Okay.
They probably ought to go buy Mark Dancer's Facing the.
All right, knock it off, you two. You guys are working with me.
Yeah, I know. It's
Come
all,
on.
send me the $5 later. Well, but I mean, maybe a book's too big a deal. But if they just spend some time looking at some of the thought conversation, Mary put together a bunch of things. I threw some links in it.
Yeah.
That people can at least go and what's going on. What is McKinsey? What's the Financial Times saying? What's the Economist saying? What is Wall Street? But find sources that aren't quote mass media.
Yeah.
So much. And it gives you the different perspectives. I mean, I probably spend 2 hours a day reading just to read. And it's part of how you keep up with things, because the acknowledgement, it's recognizing, and Paul started this, it's recognizing it for what it is. I mean, some of this stuff, I'm not going to get in the cult and go jumping through hoops for every little thing, but what's material, and you need to get multiple sources.
Yeah, without question. Thanks, I appreciate it. Like you, I've relied a lot on McKinsey, Deloitte, Boston Consulting Group. They've got short white papers that put these into perspective for us, and then we can start sifting through it if you don't mind. All right, hey guys, let's take this.
Mary kept raising her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Mary?
I'm so excited. As you know, I'm a card-carrying, crystal ball toting economist. That's what my doctoral work is in, and that's what I was a professor of for over 30 years.
Thank you.
Yep. And the biggest challenge I have is when my leaders watch the news and they make decisions based on the news. I go, wait a second. Are you basing your decision based on how the news made you feel, or information that the news gave you that's an actual fact? And then they have to stop and think, and they say, well, it just made me so mad that I'm like, wait a second. If you're making decisions because you're mad, it's probably not going to turn out well. Have you ever made a decision at home because you were mad? How did that work out for you? And then they go, okay, wait a second. I said, so what facts did you hear on the news that are now going to cause you to make a change? And then they have to stop and pause, and they go, oh, I see what you're saying. Because like Mike, I get up every morning and I look at economic data for a couple hours. That's how I relax with my morning coffee. I know. I do that so you don't have to. I know. I do that so you don't have to. And the issue there is it's hard for me to sift through all the garbage and find actual facts.
Yep.
And even when I see a fact that's being used, I'm like, what's the backstory on that fact? Because a lot of times, 3 out of 4 dentists surveyed, 4 out of 5 dentists surveyed. Well, they only surveyed 5 dentists, so to me, statistics are only as good as where they came from. And I'm always looking for the backstory. So every single time I work with somebody and they say, well, I think we're going to do this. What is driving this? Where did you get this information? If it's only a single source or the source is suspect, I really want more sources of facts. And I'm fond of saying all the time, make decisions based on facts, not emotions. You can have emotions, you just can't make decisions on them.
Boy, Mary, that's brilliant. And I hope you're all taking that. Mike started it and Mary drove it home. And you remind me, guys, several years ago, I had a speaker at our innovation conference, Ken Hay from Inferential Focus. And their job is to go out in the world and see what's going on and sift through it all. And he actually showed several articles, from well-known publications. And Mary, I think you were alluding to, and the percentage of what was written, opinion versus fact, was astronomical. I mean, the percentage of fact was so low. And people relied on, well, this expert said, or this CEO said, and taking that as fact. And what they taught us is we have to be more critical thinkers as we're doing that research. And I think that's—
Opinions are easy. Opinions are easy to have because it doesn't take any facts at all. And that is what I like to challenge. I'm like, okay, you've got this opinion. What is it based on? When I taught school, they'd say, well, this system is bad. Well, why? Well, because, my friend's cousin, sister's brothers said this. Okay, where are the facts in this? You can argue anything with me, and I want you to, and I'm going to push you. If you say the sky is blue, tell me what makes the blue sky blue, and push people for facts.
Brilliant. Michael?
Well, just to build this up from what Mary said, whenever we do strategy or somebody's talking about how do I do a pivot to get around this disruption, we always start with building a fact base. And it's set up, and everybody puts it in, and we challenge them all. How do you know? Where did it come from? Is it really a fact? And what we find, anytime you go into a distributor, the sales guy wants more salespeople, the finance guy wants, everybody wants different things. 90% of the conflicts, they have different information. If everybody's using the same fact base, it's a lot easier to make profit.
Well said. Brilliant thinking. Brilliant. Okay, guys, let's get specific, if you don't mind. And is there we've talked about this age of disruption that we're in. I'm curious if you had to say that there was one, and I know there's many, but if you had to say that there was one disruption that is going to fundamentally change the way business is done, pre or during COVID, what would you coach us all on to say we need to have our radar and understand this more than others? Paul, can I start with you, bud?
Yeah, when I think about the one thing that's going to change, it's tough to think about that one thing, but I think what we're going to see is the workplace redefined. I think that what people have seen, hey, we can work from home, we can be successful anywhere. I think there's going to be a lot of mobilization around the country where people are saying, okay, why am I paying the cost of living to live in Manhattan when I can just as easily work from the Midwest? When people are debating, hey, what should we do with our career, with our family? How do we navigate these decisions? I think the workforce is going to completely redefine what that is, because COVID has taught us that maybe the things that we've been putting off, the things that we have been putting behind our work can now run parallel with it. And we figured out a way to manage that. And I think, I don't know what the implications are for that. I think it's going to be at the forefront of a lot of how decisions are made regarding workforce from now on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion.
No, that's great. No, and I see some head shaking, Paul, and I appreciate it. And I know we're going to come back and we're going to build upon it. And so that workplace being redefined.
Mm-hmm.
What I was going to ask is, how many of us here on the panel and those listening, how many of us have heard leaders pre-COVID say, these young kids, they want flexibility. They want to work from home. They don't understand the distribution business, right? And, we can't allow that. I mean, we heard leader after leader, and then COVID, and they said, you know what, we can find a way to get it done. So yeah, I love it. Mary, how about you?
So thanks. I actually said that in my talk, Paul. I said, because of what's happening, you can now move. You were working in Manhattan, New York. Well, now you can work in Manhattan, Kansas. Go whatever the team is in Manhattan, Kansas. It's a lovely place to work. We do have that mobilization idea. People can be more mobile, but we also have to understand that now you're competing against the world price for labor. So we can hire you if you're living in Manhattan, Kansas, but we can also hire you if you're in Bangladesh. So you've got to keep your skills up. The one thing that Dirk asked about, I would have to say, it's the BLT sandwich. People like to do business with people they believe, like, and trust. You're the BLT sandwich. My CEOs, when I interviewed them for the white paper called COVID-19 and the Future of American Business, my CEOs overwhelmingly said, I don't want to go find another supplier. I want my current suppliers to provide me what I need because I already believe, like, and trust them. And that to me is a big responsibility on us, and is to take that trust that people have in us and continue to cultivate that and continue to look at what our customers need. So if there was one thing, Dirk, I would have to say, be the BLT sandwich. And who doesn't like bacon? I mean, bacon's awesome.
Are you kidding me?
I like meat candy.
Meat candy.
Meat candy.
It is the gateway meat for vegetarians.
Gateway meat.
I love it. Oh, Michael, you got to follow that up, man.
Well, it's never easy. I'll share an article that Mark Anderson wrote. It was a left column in the Wall Street Journal that, every now and then they get something that's really special. And he wrote it back in 2008. And the article was, everything is becoming software, or no, everything that can become software will.
Yep.
And he made the point that we invented the transistor right after World War II. And it's taken till just now to actually get a computer in the hand of everybody, which are our nice, cool little cell phones and stuff. And he said on top of that, because of the infrastructure, they're now all connected. So he said, it's just now, everybody's connected. He says, we're at the knee of this curve, and it's that what we're going to see is just going to absolutely explode. And it's, I think it's everything. And I think there's a couple things. I think Paul's exactly right. I don't think we can even imagine the major changes that are going to happen. But I think there's a couple constraints or guiding first principles, which goes right back to what Mary said, which is what we're talking about. What's the best currency in a time of disruption? And I think, if you start looking, it's the idea that somebody should actually be likable is a real challenge to some people. I'm sorry, but it is.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we're still people, analog beings living in a digital world, and we need that. We have these analog contexts and emotions we got to do.
Digital world. Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. So, Paul, you talked about the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Mary, you talked about, that I titled it leadership. You got to be believable, liked and trusted. And then Mike, you talked about, where technology's taken us, right? Everything is being digitized. Everything is being atomized into software and the like, and then it's all being connected, communication. So my one disruption, I think, connects all three of those. I believe the number one disruption that we need to focus in on is the disruption to us as individuals, not as not as employees, but the disruption to us as human beings. So just think about this, right? I mean, the workplace disruption that you talked about, Paul, I got news for you. It's not just changing the way work is going to get done. It's changing how I'm going to be living my life, homeschooling. It's changing how I'm going to have to deal with childcare. It's changing my life in so many ways beyond that work environment. And I think as leaders, we're going to have to open up our eyes to the human element and not just the workplace element, right? I'd like to, it is the very definition of today's world, going to you, Mary, trust. Is trust being redefined because of Twitter, because of the 24-hour news service, because of the fight? I sort of am mad at myself. On 3 days after the election, I got into a verbal argument on Facebook with some of my liberal friends or good friends. I'm a conservative. And you want to know something? Just in that 30-minute Facebook conversation, we eroded our trust with each other. Is that going to happen? And I got news for you. I went to bed feeling like crap. Mm-hmm. And so there's that human side of it. And then the connectedness, Mike, that you talk about. Everything's being digitized. Everything's being atomized. And everything's being connected. And so that goes to, my God, I'm going to need new skills. I'm going to need new capabilities. Mm-hmm. Do I have what it takes to compete and to provide the living that I had prior to all this? Is my job going to be awesome? So I believe the number one connects all of those and more. And I think the disruption is to what it's doing to us as human beings, as individuals. And I think it's going to change the very nature of how we lead throughout distribution. So, yeah.
So Dirk, I want to jump on that because
Please.
You're right. On social media, because it's more anonymous, even though we know your name, we can see your picture, it's more anonymous, which gives people sort of the bravery to say things or write things that they would normally not say to your face. And maybe they do it after a couple tequila shots, it can be excused, whatever. But if you are face to face and you could read their body language and you could see what they were saying, and you would try to come to a consensus of, hey, we just disagree. We agree to disagree. And you'd be okay, and you'd have another tequila shot and you'd be fine with it. Right. But over social media, what this has done in the past 12 months, and especially with I have a slide in one of my other programs about leadership challenges, and it's on that slide are the things that keep me up at night. And it's, Syria, Iran, political ugliness. It's been there for 2 decades, the same slide. Nothing has changed except COVID at the bottom of it has been added. But political ugliness and then overall disrespect for other people's opinion. It's been eroding over time because of social media. It makes people say and do things that they normally would not do. Some of you know what's going on with Cardi B and Candace, and that's like a whole thing on Twitter and people just all excited about it. They would never say this to each other face to face. And nor would these other people say this if they were face to face. So what I'm hoping is part of this disruption is people say, you know what, seeing people through a digital place isn't reality and it's not good for us. And what it's done is it's made us crave human contact, real human contact more. What I've seen is I've seen people desperate for relationships. People are desperate to have deeper connections. People are saying, hey, Mike, how are you really doing? What's really going on in your life? And honest to God, I got 2 hours. What can I do? What can I take off your plate? How can I help you? What's going on? We're seeing that people, I think, are eschewing some of that social media because it's not real. If everybody just looks at my life on Facebook, they would think it's the most magical place on earth, like most of us. And then you get into a discussion and then you're like, okay, that was not productive. We tend to crave those deeper relationships. And I think we are seeing this. And I do think that this 1-year experiment of staying home and being linked mostly by social media and digitally has taught us that we are, and I don't like her voice, but we are people who need people and we can't wait to see each other again. And there's something exciting about, I see your faces and I know you and I like you, but I got to tell you, I've got the t-shirt and it says, and I'm going to wear it next year. It says, I'm going to want to hug you and it could get weird. I got t-shirts made. I'm warning you now.
I'll be
Mary,
first in line for that hug.
Mary, your point is absolutely perfect. And I'll give you a hug at UID next year. All right.
Oh, thanks, Paul.
I'll buy a shot of tequila.
Man, I get one up again by Mike Marks. But if you think about it, this pandemic, early on, I was doing a webinar with a group of salespeople and they asked a question. Do you think face-to-face selling is dead as a result of this? And I thought, what a great question, because as a person who trains salespeople, I want to stay up front on this and how they feel, what's going on. The one thing that we haven't had over the past year is the one thing we need the most, and that is that connection with other people. Think about all the things we did collectively to get as close as we could. People singing from the rooftops in Italy. You've all seen those videos, opera to cheer up the people that couldn't get connected. Drive-by birthday celebrations. All right, my birthday is March 28th, coming up here in a couple of weeks. My wife organized a drive-by birthday party. 30 plus vehicles dropping by, honking their horn. I didn't even know I had that many friends. All right, I'd be surprised if 5 show up, but we do these things, being able to, early on, I jokingly admit there's been some positive things. I haven't had to see my in-laws in a couple of weeks, just.
By the way, they're listening in right now, Paul.
Yeah, you said that's positive?
I jokingly said that, but being able to give my parents a hug, my mother-in-law, being able to hug her father, because he just got his vaccination. People crave that. And we all miss that. And it's going to come back strong. I mean, I've seen it. I've been at a few live events and just there's a certain energy about it, especially with salespeople. I mean, you think about how extroverted most salespeople are. There's also the introvert. Even the introverts miss these big conferences, I think. So We'll get back there. Yeah.
Paul, I spent the last 3 days, last Friday through Sunday, down in Miami at a conference with 10,000 people put on by Grant Cardone. And it was a 10-time growth conference and it was amazing. And we heard people like Alex Rodriguez, Damon John. We heard billionaires come out onto this stage throughout the 3 days. And to a T, every one of them, to your point, walked out there, looked at the 2,000 people and said, this is amazing. This is our first time in front of people and we need this, we want this. And you could just feel the 2,000 people lifting that individual on the stage because it was the first time for them to get to interact. And I think we're just all craving. I know we're craving for it. Mike, do you have a thought on that? And then I want to.
Well, actually, I'll give you one story because it goes back to what Mary said about social media.
Yeah.
And the vitriol that people go through and the things that they say. Think about 2 dogs. There's a park across the street. Everybody goes out with their dogs. When the dogs get there, they're on the leash. They're all barking like each other. They're going to kill each other.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is unhook the leash when they're responsible for their own behavior. And all of a sudden the dogs get along fine. And being on social media,
Good point,
nobody's
yeah.
taking responsibility what they're actually saying.
Yeah. Great insight. Thanks. Okay, guys. So let's talk about what do we do in this environment, right? What do we do? The title of this panel is the best currency in times of disruption. We've talked about the disruption part of it. Let's talk about the currency. Let's talk about what's in our tool belt, what's available to us to actually lead our teams and our organization, and quite frankly, ourselves during this moment that we all are experiencing. And Mary, I know you've got this acronym, this amazing acronym and tools and thought around pivot. Can we start with you and walk us through that, please?
Sure, thanks. So I use the term pivot. This was the bulk of my session, which is pivot. And that is, make sure you as a leader are reinvigorating people with their purpose. Make sure that the I is influence and inspire others, even if you're not the person at the top of the pyramid. Whoever you are, you can inspire and influence other people for good. The V is to assess the volatility of the people around you. Don't just ask people, hey, how you doing? They're going to go, good, great, fine. That's not helpful. What you say is, hey, with everything that's going on a scale of 1 to 10, how you doing? And they go, well, I'm a 2. Well, that's a different leadership conversation than if they say I'm a 9. And now you as a leader can better respond. One of my generals was fond of saying, you know, we talk a lot about leading millennials or leading women or leading what I'm like, and he said it perfectly. He said, stop pretending to lead a demographic and start actually leading individuals. And that's what people want. People want good leadership at all levels. And that's assessing the volatility and then responding to that in an appropriate way. And that means also holding people accountable. People might be having a tough time, but if you're paying them as an employee and you've let them skate for 4 or 5 months, then all of a sudden there's a chopping block and those people are at risk because you haven't done your job as a leader, because you haven't held them accountable, because you didn't want to do your job. And that's not fair to your people. The O in pivot is to find the opportunities. There's always opportunities. And again, that's not being opportunistic because of a bad situation. It is being the optimist on how to look at it and make it better. And where do you help other people? And then the T is making sure that the people around you, and you too, have the tools, the technology, and the training you need to do your job well. And that goes back to the accountability. In the resources I've got in the app, there's one thing, it's a little misleading because it says 12 months and it just says 12 months. It's a 50-page planning guide. This is what I use with all my masterminds, all my execs. And it helps you map out the systems and accountability that helps sales teams move forward. So I know that not everybody was at my session because, well, frankly, you had great choices and yay you. So just take a look at that, because I think if we can help ourselves by creating a process and systems for ourselves that keep us more accountable to ourselves, we're better able to hold other people accountable.
Boy, I love it. Thank you. Thanks, Mary. So much good in that, right? And to be able to use the acronym pivot to help us get our arms around it. Let me ask a quick question before we go to Paul and Mike. Mary, when the general said, let's focus on leading individuals, do you mind? I think that could just go over our head, right? Just as a blanket statement.
Yeah,
So,
that was a deep thought.
No. I think it is a deep thought, and that's why I came back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So could you just highlight that a little bit more, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So when I was in the Navy, I was one of the first women to go to the Naval Academy and graduate from the Naval Academy. And people always say, well, I don't know how to lead women. And I just thought that was the stupidest thing ever. I said, we're just people, just good leadership is good leadership. Just be a good leader. It's not that hard. And they let the demographic get in the way of their leadership because they were like, oh gosh, well, what if I, but you're female. So what if I, and there was that hesitation. I'm like, and when the general came out, and he said, look, just lead the individuals, not the demographic. Millennials, Gen Zers, they want good leadership. They want strong leadership. They want boundaries. They want guidance. They want direction. They want helpful mentorship. My 68-year-olds, guess what? They want you to be a good leader too. Just because they've been there 60 years or 40 years or whatever, doesn't mean that they still don't want good leadership. And in fact, they know what good leadership is and they want it too. So focus on leading people well. And that means leading according to what they need. So some people need from you, they need big accountability, they need metrics, they need whatever is in place. But some people are wildly intrinsically motivated. And if they are, and you say something a little harsher to them, it could destroy them. So it's all about leading the individual. Don't look at somebody and say, oh, because they are fill in the blank. Like I'm from Texas. So you go, okay, because she's from Texas, I'm going to have to do this. Or because she's fill in the blank, I'm going to have to do this. Don't do that. Just lead the individual, get to know them as people, and get, I get so discouraged with groups that have qualifiers on them that somehow say, well, if we've got this qualifier on it, then things need to be different for this group of people. People are people, lead them individually.
I love it. You know, I love it. And thank you for drilling that home, Mary. I really appreciate it, because I didn't want it to get passed. And I'm reminded of a quote I heard from a former Tampa Bay Lightning coach when he was first hired. And people are saying, what's your system? What's your system? And he's saying, you're asking the wrong question. I don't have a system. I have 30 players. I have 30 systems.
That's
Every
right.
single one of them needs to be coached individually. And
That's
I think
exactly
that's
right.
what I'm hearing you say. So I love it. Thank you. Michael,
Yeah.
the currency that you believe we have available to us to lead during these disruptive times is around trust. Can you talk to us about that, please?
I love it. It's actually something I care a lot about.
Yep.
And if you think, we do a lot of work internationally, and one of the problems is that the big institutions like traditional US distribution tends not to work really well in Asia and a lot of other emerging markets, because there's not trust in institutions. And they tend to go through resellers of very small things, because the value of trust lowers the economic risk and the cost of economic activity.
Say that again.
Because
Say that again. Say that again.
If I have high trust, it lowers the risk and cost of any commercial activity. Part of the reason the US did so well is that we're a nation of laws, and lawyers, much for all the fun people who make fun of them, made it safe for us to invest because it's predictable and we understand how to take it. If you go to third world countries, and if you go to emerging markets, big distributors have a hard time, because one customer finds a reseller that they like because they trust that individual. The trust is the determination of how I source who I'm going to buy from, because of the risk and everything else. So being trusted is a huge economic advantage, and a lot of people think they have it and they don't. Classic example, we tell, well, I'm hearing you rant and rave about this supplier and what you don't like about what they're doing. What's the tone of your conversation when you're talking, when the supplier's in the room, and what do you say about it when they're not in the room? If there's a big difference, there's no trust. And by the way, the manufacturers are saying the same thing about their distributors as they go on working to build this, and they're using me to switch out to their private label. And I mean, so if trust, Dirk von Dongen told me something quarter century ago, and he said, Mike, because I said, how did you end up being like this guy? I mean, you're like Dirk. And sorry, different Dirk. And he said, I have spent my life collecting relationships and sharing them with my friends. And it has to do with trust. And it's kind of like, if you go back and hate to go back to talk about Stoic philosophy and Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, but one of his famous lines is, stop talking about what is a good man and just be one. If you always tell the truth, right, and you just do what you need to do, and remember sympathia, we're all connected. I see young people screw this up all the time. They're in a bad situation. They burn a bunch of bridges leaving, thinking they're never going to see those people again. But the world's all connected. It's only 7 degrees of freedom. And all of a sudden that person comes back. And I can't tell you in our business how many times we get a phone call from a CEO that I haven't talked to him in 3 or 5 years. And he says, you're the only guys that told me the truth. And that is worth so much money. So if you just always do the right thing, and that you don't have to lie. And I'm sure Mary has had many times in her life, she has said, I can neither confirm nor deny the presence of nuclear weapons on this festival. Right. That's not a lie. It's a statement, but you can be forthright with people and tell your truth. And if you do that, this is the problem. You can break trust in a second by one bad action and the behavior that Paul was talking about. But if you're absolutely consistent going through and just always do the right thing, over time, it becomes an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks, Mike. Brilliant, really brilliant. You know, what's going through my mind as you're saying that is that, you know, in disruptive times, there is just amazing amounts of uncertainty, right? Up and down the channel with our employees, with our communities, with our country, with our leaders, with our suppliers, with our bankers. There's just all this uncertainty. How do you get through it? What I'm taking from you is, let's double down, let's double check on, just as you say, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing the things that are going to allow our people to trust what we say and what we do going forward? I think in times of uncertainty, it's always important. But
Well, I think it comes back to, from a business point of view,
yeah,
am I being an honorable person? Am I being truthful? And then I really love the BLT, which Mary provide authors acknowledgement that it's formally stolen, because I love it. Because that distributor or that supplier or that customer, they're going to find the other people that are trustworthy as well, and those are the ones they're going to choose to deal with.
I love
That's
it.
just
Thank
the way, and it's economics.
You bet. You bet, Michael. Thank you. Paul, how about yourself, man? What do you believe we have at our disposal as leaders in terms of the currency to lead during this point of disruption? And I know attitude is a big thing for you, bud.
Yep. I mean, to me, the best currency is our attitude. We move in the direction of our thoughts. We behave as we believe. One thing I found, a quote here on John Gordon's podcast, Positive View Podcast. He's interviewing Clemson's head coach, Dabo Swinney. And Dabo said, I really believe that when 2020 gets here, we're going to look back and this is going to have been the best decade in Clemson football history. That's what I believe. What's interesting about that, the quote's not overly inspiring. I mean, yeah, it's rah-rah. It was the timing of it. He actually said that after Clemson had their absolute worst season. He comes out and puts it out there, and it was like in 2010.
Well said. Yeah.
But his belief and that attitude, that's the one thing when I'm talking to sales leader, when I've been inspired by salespeople throughout this pandemic, it's their attitude. Let's face it, this past year has been Groundhog Day. We get up, we go do the same thing. These tough times have served as a catalyst to build mental strength. You think about it, the CDC recommends 40 minutes a day of activity or 30 minutes a day so that you maintain your physical health. When's the last time we spent 20, 30 minutes working on our mental health every day? Early on in the pandemic, I did several programs, how to sell through tough and uncertain times, and that's actually morphed into a book that's coming out later this year. And in the book, we build what's called the Daily Mental Flex. And this was taken out of multiple interactions with different sales leaders, different research. And if you Google the Daily Mental Flex, you can find a link to a podcast where I actually created it. You can check it out. But the whole premise is that every day we've got to build our mental strength because it was tough. I mean, I can speak for my fellow speakers. We ran a business during this tough time. It was pretty tough. Salespeople that can no longer see their customers, that's tough. When they're losing customers, going out of business, people are losing people, that's tough. We have to have that mental resilience, and we got to work on that every day. Attitude is going to be critical. And during this past year, one of my favorite books of all time, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. If you've never read the book, it's an older book, but it is absolutely, it's wonderful. He talks, the author, Viktor Frankl, by the way, who survived 3 different Holocaust camps, concentration camps. I mean, in the book, he says that everything can be taken from a man, but they still have how they can control their attitude. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's one of the most powerful quotes coming from a person who witnessed just horrific things. And I know this has been a tough time for many of the salespeople, many of the sales leaders. Every day, your attitude is something we have to work on. So check out that Daily Mental Flex. I'll have more to come on that. But man, what an opportunity to build mental resilience over this past year.
Hey, can I jump on what
go ahead,
Paul said right there? Yeah, the resilience piece, and I love Viktor Frankl's book. It's humbling every time I look at it. That I just added to the vault of tools for my resources here. I just added in my quick 70-page ebook on resiliency because people are struggling with bouncing. They're just struggling to bounce back. And I interviewed Colonel Lee Ellis, who is a POW in Vietnam for part of this. His book is called Leading with Honor, regardless of the situation. Really moving. But what Paul said about the daily activities, I think is really critical. And many people say, I don't have time to read. It's horrifying that over 50% of Americans will never actually finish a book after high school.
Amazing.
But when you think about that, the average business book, the average novel only takes about 5 hours to read. So you can read, like 30 something novels in a year if you just read 30 minutes a day. A business book, a 250-page business book, averages about 7 hours, 6.9 hours to read for the average person. You could read 26 business books a year if you just read, 30, or that's bad. Yeah, that's right. If you just read 30 minutes a day. So in the book that Paul talked about, the daily activities, this is the new book that I came out with this year as well, because I had people who needed daily leadership habits to stay on track. And so that's where this book was born. I took a business strategic plan and twisted it for your personal strategic plan. And that's how I start this book, because we've got to make sure that we are mentally and leadership, and I focus on the leadership side, of course, but we've got to be mentally squared away too. We've got to be those people want to follow. And that means practicing leadership every day.
Yeah, Mary, I love it. Thanks. And thanks for adding on there. And I think, guys, so you talked about pivot, Mary, you talked about trust, Mike, you talked about attitude, Paul. And I think all of those things lead towards my number one currency. And the way I word that is, I think the currency we have as leaders is to focus on the human spirit. I've come to the conclusion that before COVID and now with COVID, that we have to stop talking about human capital in our businesses, and we need to start talking about the human spirit. I met a showroom manager a year and a half ago. Denise was her name. And what she said to me is, she said that for years I thought that I had to mold myself to what distribution thought I needed to be. She said, I had this experience with you, Dirk, that now I know I can mold distribution to what I know it needs to be. Marlene told me, she says, Dirk, I have only 6 years left. I need to know that I've made a difference in my career. I have to tell you, we have to think less about the human capital. We got to think more about the human spirit. And I think we have people around us, it goes to everything the three of you talked about, that are yearning to live their best self. They're yearning. And as leaders, what more noble of a calling do we have? The profits are going to come. The results are going to come if we focus on helping the individuals on our team, in our organization, unleash their full potential. And I think that's what we have the opportunity to do. There's studies out there that says only 32% of our employees feel that they're maximizing their work potential. That's a crime. That's a crime of leadership. We have to talk less about human capital, more about human spirit. I don't know about you. The fact that we talk about our employees being our best asset, I think is wrong. Every one of those individuals have a soul that we need to tap into. We talk about human capital, that we provide jobs, yeah, but we provide something deeper. We provide meaning for these individuals. Human capital, we ask people to clock in. No, you guys talked about it. We have to be the leader that inspires them to live their best self. We talk about tenure, number of years in this industry. We've got to go beyond that and ensure that we're working with our people to fulfill their potential. We talk about job descriptions. It's not about the job description. It's about the impact that we're giving them the opportunity to make day in, day out, to live their best self. And so I believe our currency is that we have to unleash that human spirit. And now is the opportunity, because you all said it, coming through COVID, our people have been stressed, they've been beat down, they've been worn out, they've been tired. We've got to help them move from that stress state to where they're taking control and focus. We then have to help them move from taking control and being focused to being energized and really looking forward to the day, and moving from being energized to living their best self and their best life. And I guarantee you, man, if we find a way to do that as a leader, the business will almost take care of itself. Guys, we are up on time. My gosh, I'm sorry. Let's go through around the room, and any last thoughts. Mary, can I start with you, please?
Y'all go out there and just be the best leader you can be. I loved being on this panel with everybody. It was just such a joy to get to know Dirk and Paul and Mike even more. And this is such a great organization. I just feel so privileged. It's humbling. It's an honor. It's awe-inspiring. It's just amazing to be part of this amazing organization that really, truly helps other people be the leader they want to be. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. I love it, Mary. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your genius with us today. Michael?
Mary's had formal leadership training from some of the best leaders around.
You bet.
And if you're out here running a company and you haven't had any training in leadership, what makes you think you're good at it? One thing I'll leave, I think it's very useful to hate bullies. And basically what happens at somebody that has power and they exercise that power over other people because they don't understand the responsibility that comes with that power. Good leaders feel the responsibility and the obligation of their employees. So there should be no room for bullies anywhere.
Love it. Thank you. Paul?
One thing, talked about attitude. Every day it is a daily mental battle to sell what we're selling through right now. What I would encourage you to remember, it's easy to have a good attitude when things are going well. At those moments where you're frustrated, where you feel like giving up, where you feel like, man, this just is not working out, reach out to one of your colleagues. Look to have them pick you up. Reach out to people. You don't have to go through this struggling time together, but also realize that those toughest moments, those are going to be your defining moments. Make a choice to push through, not pull back. And pushing through is what most people don't do. So you're going to set yourself apart. So great to be on this panel with my esteemed colleagues. Look forward to seeing you all live next year as well.
And I'll buy that shot, Mary.
I love it. Hey, Paul.
Can I get
I'll
one?
hold you to it.
Well, let's go out and get the shrimp and the horseradish sauce. Joanna, what's that restaurant?
St.
All
Elmo's.
right, guys.
Hey, real quick, guys. There's a question about the book. Where can you get it? And so if
On
it's
Amazon.
about man search for
On
me,
Amazon.
you can get it on Amazon. But real quick, I know we're up on time. Everybody, where can everybody that's listening get a hold of you? Mary?
Productiveleaders.com.
Thank you. Michael?
ircg.com.
Paul?
TomReillyTraining.com.
Thank you. And I can be found at unleashwd.com. unleashwd.com. And guys, I'll leave you with this and we'll turn it over to Joanna to wrap it up if that's what's going to happen, or we'll go black. I'm not sure. I'll leave you with this. Again, thank you to UID. Thank you to the three of you. Thank you for the 300 of you taking part in UID, investing in yourself. And I'll leave you with the thought, keep leading. Keep leading. The world, your world, needs you more than ever. Keep leading. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you in Indianapolis next year.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. After that, I'm not sure what to say. But again, thank you so much. We do have just a few announcements that we do want to make as it relates to the wrap up for UID. Again, as Dirk mentioned, we had 335 people register for this program, and we hope that you enjoyed this particular format. And again, we are very much looking forward to seeing you all next year in Indianapolis. I'd like to go ahead and introduce Kelly. Kelly Jones is the Director of Learning and Program Content for the National Association of Electrical Distributors, and she is the chair for UID 2021. So Kelly?
Hi. So this has been a unique program. AEA is pleased to have offered its association members. We hope you've enjoyed your UID experience. And as with all programs, we have a few final notes that we need to share with you. So beginning Monday, the session recordings will be available through the app. Those of you who registered with an all access pass will have access to all session recordings. Those of you who registered on a one-day pass will have access to the recordings for the sessions you registered to attend. Those recordings will be available through April 19th, 2021. So you've got a few weeks to go back and review and watch some more. I know we've mentioned more than a few times, but your feedback on the sessions you attended is extremely important to us. We would love to have those completed by April 19th, so please take a minute to complete them. Tomorrow, you will receive an email with a link to a short survey that will take about 3 minutes to complete. This is the first time UID has been offered virtually, and so your feedback is invaluable as we evaluate the program and assess what worked well and where we can improve. If you are an all access participant and participated live in at least one session each day, you will receive a certificate of completion awarding you 3 hours of CEU. If you were a one-day past participant and attended at least one session on that day, you will also receive a certificate of completion for 1 hour of CEU. And that CEU can be applied to fulfill the requirements for the Purdue University Certificate of Innovative Distribution. We hope you join UID instructors and past participants on LinkedIn. This is a perfect group to join to stay connected and to stay in the know. And speaking of LinkedIn, we're starting a new tradition this year. With your certificate of completion, we will be providing you with a badge to add to your LinkedIn profile, identifying you as a UID 2021 participant. Finally, around UID content, don't forget to check out UID year round. Through this program, we offer a free webinar series open to AEA Association members on a variety of topics presented by our fabulous UID instructors and subject matter experts. And this year, we had a few participants posting to social media in our pre-event contest. Our social media coordinator did the honors of selecting the winner, who will receive a free registration to UID 2022. That winner is Shannon Mills, Marketing Manager at Industrial Source. Industrial Source is a member of the Gases and Welding Distributors Association. So congratulations, Shannon. Okay, so finally, we want to thank our instructors for their flexibility, their understanding, and most importantly, for sharing their expertise in their presentations. But this program would not be possible without our participants. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see many of you in person in Indianapolis in 2022, and UID is now officially concluded.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey,
Bye,
thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
We'll see you.